This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor.
This is just me talking about my personal financial journey. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Enjoy the show.
You know, there is this very specific, really visceral moment when you're flying in a commercial jet. Like you're barreling down the runway, the cabin is violently rattling, the engines are absolutely screaming, and you're gripping the armrests.
Oh yeah, white knuckling it.
Exactly. It's sheer brute force, right? Just fighting gravity with everything that machine has just to rip itself off the tarmac. Every ounce of energy is being expended just for survival, just to get airborne.
Yeah, the friction is inescapable. I mean, you feel it in your teeth. Everything about that initial ascent requires maximum output, both mechanically and, well, frankly, biologically if you're a nervous flyer.
Right, but then you hit that magical threshold. You break through the heavy cloud cover. You hit cruising altitude, and the engines quiet down to this soft, barely noticeable hum. The seatbelt sign dings off, and suddenly you're just gliding.
It's a total sensory shift.
It really is. The entire physical sensation in the cabin changes from this desperate struggle for lift to a really calm, sustained momentum. And today, we are taking a deep dive into that exact same transition. But, you know, we aren't talking about aviation.
No, definitely not.
We are looking at this fascinating stack of behavioral psychology, financial philosophy, and wealth strategy that all points to a specific inflection point in your bank account and, more importantly, in your brain. So our mission today is to explore the profound psychological metamorphosis that happens when scaling your net worth from $100,000 to $250,000.
We should probably draw a very hard line before we even begin here. We are stripping away the mechanics today.
Right, no math.
Exactly. We are not analyzing the math of, tax loss harvesting or the velocity of real estate portfolios or how to rebalance an index fund. The sources we're looking at focus strictly on the internal software update.
The mindset piece.
Yeah, they detail what happens inside your head and subsequently within your social circles when you hit this very specific, heavily researched wealth milestone.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to look beyond the literal dollars. We really need to explore the actual transformation of personal identity when you, the listener, move from relying purely on the physical labor of your own two hands to achieving what these researchers call asset-backed autonomy.
Asset-backed autonomy. It's a great term.
Right, because the literature points to this window moving from 100 to 250,000 as the exact moment you start, quote, operating at altitude.
Yeah, and the reason that specific financial window is so critical is that it basically represents the tipping point of compound interest. It is the moment the math starts working without your physical sweat.
Wow.
But before we even analyze how the external world reacts to your new wealth, we have to tear down the internal baseline. There is this fundamental, almost cellular shift in how you view your own time, your own labor, and ultimately your own value in the marketplace. In the wealth strategy literature, they often refer to this as the Earl Shove metamorphosis.
Okay, Earl Shove. And for those who might not know the history, he was the mentor to the legendary motivational philosopher Jim Rohn back in the mid-20th century, right?
That's the one. And Shove coined a concept that really underpins this entire psychological transition. He famously told Rohn, set a goal to become a millionaire for what it will make of you to achieve it.
Oh, I love that. For what it will make of you.
Right, because the ultimate prize isn't the pile of cash. The prize is the psychological and operational upgrade required to actually attain and hold that money. Going from 100K to 250K is usually the threshold where the illusion of the paycheck finally breaks.
Meaning you realize you don't just have to trade time for money.
Exactly. You realize your money is operating as a silent employee in the background. It's no longer a one-to-one ratio of you trading hours of your life for a handful of dollars just to pay the electric bill.
Because you're earning money while you sleep. Your investments are generating returns, dividends are quietly dropping into the account. Compounding is finally taking the wheel.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that the psychological impact of that realization is just massive. It creates that state of asset-backed autonomy. Because for the vast majority of human history, and honestly for the vast majority of the population today, survival is inextricably tied to every waking hour of physical or mental labor.
You stop working, you stop eating.
Precisely. If you stop working, the resources stop flowing, and the threat of ruin is immediate. So when you sever that direct tie between daily labor and daily survival, it frees up an immense amount of cognitive load.
Okay, let's drill down into the biology of that cognitive load.
Yeah.
Because if I go back to that airplane analogy, It feels like the difference between flying a plane manually through a thunderstorm, where every micro-adjustment of the yoke is a matter of life and death,
Yeah, terrifying.
versus turning on the autopilot in clear skies. I mean, you still like to monitor the dashboard, obviously, but the sheer blinding panic is gone. But here's what I don't understand. If the panic is gone, shouldn't that just feel amazing? Like, why do these sources claim that reaching this financial milestone and dropping that stress is actually incredibly disorienting?
Well, the disorientation comes from the architecture of the human brain. Your nervous system literally cannot distinguish between a physical threat in the ancestral environment, like, say, a predator stalking you, and a modern conceptual threat, like missing rent or an unexpected medical bill.
Oh, wow. So the body reacts the exact same way.
Exactly. Both trigger the amygdala. Both flood your system with cortisol. For your entire adult life, your nervous system has likely been wired for this low-level financial fight or flight. You wear this heavy, invisible backpack of existential dread every single day.
And reaching 250K takes the backpack off.
Right. When your net worth crosses into that range, the liquid safety net effectively unclips that backpack. The cortisol drip stops. But nature abhors a vacuum.
So your brain doesn't know what to do with the sudden quiet.
It creates a total identity crisis. I mean, when you are no longer spending 60% of your daily mental energy worrying about basic financial survival, you are forced to figure out who you actually are. You have to develop a personality and a purpose that isn't just rooted in, getting through the month.
Which means the moment your internal stress falls silent, you suddenly have the bandwidth to hear everything else. You look out the window of the plane, your internal autopilot is engaged, and you realize the people around you in the cabin are still flying manually. And they are completely exhausted. They're still gripping the armrests, flying through the thunderstorm.
And the contrast is jarring. The sources indicate that wealth builders at this stage experience a very sharp, almost visceral drop in tolerance for old friends, past associates, and their default social circles. Yeah, this evolution of relationships is consistently cited as the most painful part of the transition to asset-backed autonomy.
The default social circle. You mean the people you just happen to know because you grew up on the same cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
or you were in the same fraternity, or you worked at the same entry-level cubicle job a decade ago.
Exactly. And when you begin operating at altitude, the conversations in those legacy circles start to feel incredibly heavy. It is the literal gravity of the past trying to pull the wealth builder back down to the runway.
So you start noticing things you didn't see before.
You suddenly have the cognitive clarity to notice that the dialogue in your old circle revolves almost entirely around complaining, passive aggression, or completely self-inflicted financial drama.
So what does this all mean? I hear the logic of establishing healthy boundaries, but let's be real. To the guy you've known since middle school who is still struggling to pay off his credit card, you don't look sovereign.
No, not at all.
You just look like an arrogant snob who abandoned him the second you got $250,000 in the bank.
Yeah.
How does the wealth builder separate the psychological necessity of reducing their cognitive load from simply becoming a total elitist?
That's the trap. The accusation of elitism is the #1 weapon used by the legacy circle to enforce conformity, and it's something newly successful people struggle with deeply. But the distinction the research draws is between elitism and relational alignment.
Okay, break that down for me.
Elitism is looking down on people who are genuinely struggling with systemic or unavoidable hardship. It's a superiority complex fueled by ego. Healthy boundaries, on the other hand, are about refusing to absorb the unmanaged, self-inflicted plights of others.
Unmanaged and self-inflicted being the operative words there.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of how friendships are often formed in our 20s. Let's say you have an old friend who constantly complains about being broke, but categorically refuses to change their spending habits, refuses to read a book, and refuses to look for a better job.
We all know someone like that.
Right. But when you were both broke, that complaining wasn't just noise. It was a form of bonding. It was mutual commiseration.
Wow. Commiseration is a form of bonding. It's like realizing that the only thing holding the friendship together was mutual stress. You were basically just trauma bonding over being broke.
And once you transition into asset-backed autonomy, which, by the way, required extreme discipline, taking calculated risks, and undergoing that internal Earl Shoaff metamorphosis, you remove your stress from the equation.
So the bond breaks.
Suddenly, there's nothing left to talk about. Their conversation feels like a dead weight because it is actively demanding that you carry their unmanaged cognitive load. You aren't being a snob for stepping away. You are protecting your new baseline.
Because if you stay at that table, The gravity of their unresolved issues just drags on your new momentum. You either sink back to their level of financial anxiety just to make them feel comfortable, or you leave.
That harsh reality forces a total restructuring of how and why you form communities moving forward. I mean, historically, human beings relied on proximity-based communities for literal survival. Anthropologically speaking, you needed the local herd.
Default dependency.
Yes, you needed your neighbors, your extended family, the people physically around you in the village. If the crop failed or you broke your leg, you relied on their charity to survive.
And today.
In the modern era, that translates to needing immediate validation from the people in your zip code or your legacy online circles. But as your assets compound, your reliance on that physical, proximity-based community plummets.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The analogy that jumps out at me here is the difference between being assigned a random group project in high school versus handpicking a team of co-founders for a startup.
Oh, the mechanics of that analogy map perfectly onto the research. In high school, you don't choose your group. You are simply sitting in the same row, so the teacher lumps you together by geographic coincidence.
Right, you just have to deal with it.
You have to figure out how to survive the project with whoever you got, regardless of their work ethic, their values, or their underlying intelligence. You just tolerate the friction to get the passing grade. That is default dependency.
But when you launch a startup, you scour the earth for people who align with your specific vision, your obsessive drive, and who fill your exact skill gaps. You don't partner with the guy from your cul-de-sac just because he lives there. You partner with the person who matches your trajectory.
And the brutal reality of the startup world is that if a co-founder stops pulling their weight or their values misalign with the company's trajectory, you buy them out. You separate.
It's just business.
Exactly. Applying that level of intentionality to personal friendships is why this wealth transition is so psychologically agonizing. What these sources are detailing is that crossing the $250K threshold gives you the financial power to treat your personal life like a startup. You no longer need the random group project for survival.
Which brings us to the concept of elective sovereignty.
Elective sovereignty is the ability to choose your relationships based entirely on shared values, mutual growth, and intellectual alignment. You don't need the local herd to pay your mortgage if you get sick, because your dividend yields and liquid assets are doing that.
So you get to pick your people.
You are entirely free to curate your social circle.
Which sounds incredibly liberating on paper. But practically speaking, it has to be terrifying for people. I mean, if you strip away the local herd and you stop hanging out with the people you only bonded with over mutual stress, the room suddenly gets very empty, very fast.
And that sudden emptiness introduces the shadow side of this financial transition. It's the danger zone that trips up countless wealth builders. The vacuum left by the legacy friends creates the lone wolf trap.
Which raises an obvious question for anyone actively trying to build wealth. If financial autonomy provides incredible options, and other people's unmanaged stress is a drag on your cognitive load, why wouldn't you just disconnect entirely?
Well,
I'm going to push back on the idea that this is a trap at all. Isn't the ultimate goal for a lot of entrepreneurs and investors just to be left alone on a beach? You grind it out, you get the money working for you, you buy a private island, literally or metaphorically, and you say goodbye to society. If you've earned the absolute right to ignore everyone, why is isolation framed as a danger?
this raises an important question, but the answer is that human biology doesn't care about your portfolio balance. The fundamental evolutionary human need for deep, meaningful connection doesn't evaporate just because your passive income covers your living expenses.
Even if we think it does.
Right. We are neurochemically wired for tribe. The trap is confusing the concept of sovereign peace with absolute solitude.
Define the difference between those two states for me.
Sovereign peace is having the ultimate power to control your time, to enforce your boundaries, and to say no to misaligned obligations without fear of financial ruin.
Okay.
Solitude, when pursued as a permanent lifestyle, becomes chronic isolation. And the clinical data on chronic isolation is grim. It leads to persistent dopamine depletion, severe depression, cognitive decline, and a profound loss of purpose. I mean, look at historical archetypes of massive wealth coupled with intense isolation. It rarely ends in happiness. It usually ends in paranoia.
So the wealth builder who retreats entirely, thinking they are just protecting their peace, is actually starving their nervous system of the very social regulation it evolved to need.
Exactly. The money buys you the freedom from default dependency, but it does not buy you freedom from human biology. If you just retreat from society entirely, you stagnate.
So what's the middle ground?
The wealth builder has to learn to balance the absolute peace of self-funding their life with the necessity of finding deep, high-vibe, aligned connection. Autonomy shouldn't mean being a lone wolf. It should mean having the freedom and the resources to finally go out and find your actual pack.
The people who are operating at the same altitude.
The individuals who challenge your thinking, who inspire you to scale further, and who share your core values. You are trading the quantity of proximity-based friends for the quality of aligned peers. It is selective, high-altitude association.
But you have to actively build it. It doesn't just happen organically.
No, you have to be incredibly intentional. You have to actively go out and curate this new community because the old one will inevitably fall away as the gravity of the past takes hold. If you don't actively build a new, aligned circle to replace the default one, the resulting isolation will slowly erode the very peace and autonomy you worked so hard to achieve.
That makes perfect sense. The wealth buys you the freedom to choose your table, but if you choose no one, you just end up dining alone in an empty room. Okay, let's bring this all together for you listening. Because scaling from 100K to 250K, as we've deeply explored today, is barely about the financial mechanics. It's about managing a profound psychological metamorphosis.
It's the Earl Shoaff principle.
Right. You have to become a fundamentally different person to acquire and hold the wealth.
It requires shedding the emotional gravity of misaligned relationships. It demands that you establish rigorous, healthy boundaries to protect your new cognitive freedom. And really understanding the difference between genuine elitism and simply refusing to carry someone else's unmanaged stress.
And it's about navigating that painful shift from default dependency, the people you just happen to be stuck with for survival, to elective association. Finding the people who actually match your trajectory.
Yes, but doing it carefully.
Exactly. You have to execute that shift intentionally, avoiding the lone wolf trap. You must balance the incredible peace of your asset-backed autonomy with the inescapable human necessity for real, high-vibe connection.
Operating at altitude means you are fully at the controls of your own life. You can no longer blame the turbulence on your boss, your neighbors, or your circumstances.
Whether you have already blown past this financial milestone or you're actively in the trenches building toward it right now, you need to prepare for the emotional and social turbulence that inherently comes with it. Protect your sovereign peace. Guard your cognitive load relentlessly. Because once you hit cruising altitude, the rules of flight completely change.
They absolutely do.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over today. If financial survival is no longer the glue holding your social circle together, what happens when you look around the room and realize that you, and only you, are completely responsible for who is sitting at your table?
The ultimate test of autonomy is who you choose to bring with you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.